You know the feeling. You're scrolling online, minding your own business, and then bam, you're just bombarded. Ads for shoes for 20 bucks, a smartwatch for 20, a million other things from a company that feels like it just appeared out of nowhere. Yep, that company is Temu.
Okay, so let's get right into it because this is the question, right? How does a company go from being completely unknown to absolutely everywhere, seemingly overnight? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on Temu. We're going to look at the data, see exactly how they pulled it off, and figure out what the real price of too good to be true actually is.
So to get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number. In just 1 year after launching in the US, Temu hit 50 million monthly active users. That made it the most downloaded app in the entire country.
And all those users? Oh yeah, they're spending money. In 2023, sales were estimated to have topped $15 billion. But here's where it gets really wild. The growth. In January 2024, that's just 1 month, sales were up over 800%. I mean, that's not just growth, that's an absolute explosion. So the real question is, how is any of this even possible?
Well, the answer starts with a totally radical way of thinking about shopping. Temu's first genius move was to get rid of one of the biggest, most expensive parts of retail, the warehouse. And by doing that, they solve a massive puzzle for the people who are actually making the products.
Think about it like this. On one side, you've got the old way of doing things. A product gets made in a factory, shipped to a giant warehouse, then sent to a store, and then finally it gets to you. Temu just draws a straight line. It connects the factory directly to your front door, cutting out all those expensive steps in the middle.
Now, for the manufacturer, this is a total game changer. Their biggest headache has always been trying to guess what you and I are going to buy, right? If they make too much stuff, they're stuck paying to store it all. If they make too little, well, they've just left money on the table.
Temu just flips that whole idea on its head. Instead of trying to predict demand, they just measure it in real time. The source for this explainer put it perfectly. Every product is its own little market survey. They can list thousands of weird items, see which ones people are actually clicking on, and then tell the factory to only make the winners. It's brilliant.
Of course, there's always a catch, and we're the ones who feel it. Because the product is often literally being made after you click buy, you have to wait. A Temu package can take up to 15 business days to show up. I mean, that's an eternity compared to Amazon's 2-day shipping, but believe it or not, that's still not the whole story.
The real secret sauce, the key that unlocks this whole business model and those ridiculously low prices, it isn't just about clever logistics. No, it's an obscure little piece of US trade law that gives them a massive, and I mean massive, advantage.
It's called the de minimis threshold. The easiest way to think about it is like a customs fast pass. If a single package coming into the country is valued below a certain dollar amount, it basically gets to sail right through. No taxes, no tariffs, and very little inspection.
And here is where your jaw might hit the floor. Look at the difference. In Canada, that limit is just 20 bucks. In the EU, 150 euros. But in the United States, it's a whopping $800. This isn't just a loophole. It's a 6-lane superhighway built specifically for companies shipping tons of small, cheap packages directly to you.
So, just how busy is this superhighway? Well, it's estimated that 600,000 packages from Temu and its competitor Shein come into the US every single day using this rule. To put that in perspective, that's like 90 fully loaded Boeing 777s filled with stuff showing up daily. Okay, so now we get the how. It's a direct from the factory model that's supercharged by this giant trade loophole. But a combination this powerful has enormous consequences. We're talking ripple effects that go way beyond just getting a cheap phone case in the mail.
And the sources really point to 3 huge areas of concern we need to talk about. The environmental costs of making all this stuff, some really serious human rights questions about the supply chain, and how this whole model basically creates an unfair economic game.
So first, let's talk environment. All of those cheap plastic gizmos and fast fashion clothes, what are they made of? Petrochemicals. They come from oil. In fact, the International Energy Agency has estimated that without the huge demand from this sector, global oil demand would actually be lower today than it was back in 2019.
Then you have the human rights concerns, and this is serious. The US has banned imports that are made with Uyghur forced labor, but a congressional report found that Temu does, and I'm quoting here, next to nothing to make sure its supply chain is clean. And because all these little packages fly under that de minimis radar, it's incredibly hard for customs to even check where they came from and enforce that ban.
And this is where the economic distortion just becomes crystal clear. Look at the tariffs. In 2022, a company like Gap paid $700 million in U.S. import duties. H&M paid $200 million. But because all of their individual packages fall below that $800 threshold, Temu and Shein paid $0. They're not even breaking the rules, they're just playing on a completely different field, one that's tilted heavily in their favor.
So you have to ask, is this sustainable? Is this just a lightning in a bottle moment? Between the growing political pressure to close that loophole and some real questions about customer satisfaction, there are signs that maybe the party might be winding down.
And this brings us to a really crucial point: customer loyalty, or in Temu's case, the lack of it. A Goldman Sachs estimate puts Temu's customer retention rate at only around 30%. Now compare that to Amazon Prime, which keeps something like 90% of its customers coming back year after year. People are definitely curious about Temu, but it seems like they aren't sticking around.
And you know what? We've seen this movie before. Do you remember Wish.com? The business model was almost identical. Flood the internet with ads for super cheap stuff shipped directly from China. And what happened? Well, after that initial novelty wore off, the company's value just collapsed by over 99% from its peak.
So in the end, Temu itself, it might just fade away. Maybe because of political pressure, or maybe because we all just get tired of long shipping times and so-so quality. But the model it perfected, that direct shipping, the exploitation of trade laws, that real-time market testing, that is incredibly powerful. And it leaves us with a much bigger and way more interesting question. If Temu falls, who or what is going to rise from its ashes?